Yeah, I think the player safety has done their best. It's not an easy thing to do. With that being said, I think that there is reason to take a look at how the whole process works. If every time there's a suspension, everybody complains about it. Well, why don't we take a look at the process and figure out if there's a better way to make sure that both parties are happy? Because it seems like there's a lot of frustration there.
One hit on the ice changed the conversation across the entire NHL. A star player collapsed, a season ended, and a suspension decision triggered outrage from teams and fans. Then, Conor McDavid spoke publicly about the league's discipline system. His comments quickly spread across hockey media and raised new scrutiny around the NHL player safety process, and the controversy was far from finished. Conor McDavid addressed the controversy after the NHL announced the suspension of Anaheim Ducks defenseman Radko Gudas. McDavid spoke to reporters about the league discipline process following the incident that injured Toronto Maple Leafs captain Auston Matthews. During the discussion, McDavid focused on how suspensions are handled in the NHL and how players react when disciplinary decisions are announced. McDavid pointed to a pattern that often appears after these rulings. When speaking about the issue, he said, "If every time there's a suspension, everybody complains about it?" His comment drew attention because McDavid is the captain of the Edmonton Oilers and one of the most recognizable players in the NHL. His remarks quickly became a major talking point across hockey media. The discussion surrounding McDavid comments began after a controversial hit during a game between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Anaheim Ducks. Late in the second period, Ducks defenseman Radko Gudas delivered a knee-on-knee hit on Maple Leafs forward Auston Matthews. Matthews immediately fell to the ice and appeared to be in pain. Officials stopped play and assessed a 5-minute major penalty and a game misconduct to Gudas. Matthews left the game and did not return. Medical evaluations were completed after the game. Doctors confirmed that Matthews suffered a grade 3 tear of the medial collateral ligament in his left knee. The injury also included a quadriceps contusion. Team officials later announced that Matthews would miss the remainder of the 2025-2026 NHL season because of the injury. At the time the injury occurred, Matthews was one of the top offensive players for the Maple Leafs. He had recorded 27 goals and 26 assists for 53 points in 60 games during the season. The injury removed the team captain and leading scorer from the lineup for the rest of the year. The National Hockey League Department of Player Safety began reviewing the hit shortly after the game ended. The department evaluates dangerous plays and determines whether additional discipline is required. After reviewing video of the incident, the league scheduled a disciplinary hearing with Radko Gudas. The hearing was conducted by phone, which is one of the standard formats used in certain NHL disciplinary cases. After the review was completed, the Department of Player Safety announced that Gudas would receive a 5-game suspension for kneeing. The decision quickly became the center of a growing debate around the league. The NHL confirmed that Radko Gudas would serve a 5-game suspension following the review by the Department of Player Safety. The suspension was issued after the phone hearing concluded. Under NHL disciplinary rules, a phone hearing limits the maximum punishment that can be issued without further procedures. Because the hearing was not conducted in person, the league could issue a suspension of up to 5 games. The ruling quickly triggered strong reactions across the hockey world. Many discussions focused on the difference between the length of the suspension and the severity of the injury suffered by Auston Matthews. The Toronto Maple Leafs had lost their captain for the remainder of the season, while the suspension required Gudas to miss only 5 games. Maple Leafs head coach Craig Berube addressed the situation during his media availability. Berube criticized the play and spoke about the league decision. During his remarks, he stated, "It's a dirty play." His comments spread quickly across sports media and added more attention to the disciplinary ruling. The reaction did not stop there. Auston Matthews' agent Judd Moldaver also responded publicly after the suspension was announced. Moldaver questioned the hearing process used by the NHL. His remarks focused on the decision to hold the disciplinary review by phone rather than in person. Speaking about the ruling, he said, "A phone hearing and 5 games is just laughable." The criticism increased as analysts discussed how the NHL handles dangerous plays and disciplinary hearings. The Department of Player Safety is responsible for reviewing incidents involving illegal hits, dangerous contact, and other violations that may lead to suspension. Officials study game footage, assess the type of contact, and review the outcome of the play before issuing penalties. While the suspension was finalized, the debate continued to grow across the league. Coverage appeared across television broadcasts, sports radio shows, and online reports. The focus of the discussion moved beyond the hit itself and toward the structure used by the NHL to determine discipline. Conor McDavid comments added another layer to that conversation. By questioning the process used to issue suspensions, the Edmonton Oilers captain shifted attention toward the broader system used by the league. His remarks circulated across major sports outlets and continued to fuel discussion about how disciplinary decisions are made within the NHL.
Craig, Radko Gudas, he had a hearing with the NHL Department of Player Safety today for kneeing Auston Matthews. We don't have any news yet. We haven't heard anything, but the maximum he can be suspended is 5 games. So what did you think of the hit, and how long should Gudas be suspended?
So what I thought of the hit, it's a dirty hit. It's not a hockey play. It's an unnecessary play. It's a dangerous play. And you think about the player saying, well, it wasn't intentional. No kidding, it's not intentional. Or we'd be talking about premeditated kneeing. Bottom line is that play doesn't belong in the game. And those types of plays, knees, heads, hits from behind, those can have real changes in a player's career and in his life. So to me, I don't care what your intent was, you can't make that hit. Evgeny Malkin just got suspended for 5 games for a high stick.
A violent moment on the ice has now turned into one of the biggest disciplinary stories in the NHL. One collision, one injured captain, and now a suspension that has sparked debate across the league. Anaheim defenseman Radko Gudas delivered a hit that removed one of hockey top stars from the season, and the NHL quickly stepped in with punishment.
Razor, obviously last night there was a big to-do in Toronto with the Matthews injury and the lack of response. Like when I'm sure you saw the play and the lack of response. As a guy who was just the ultimate teammate who would, stick up and defend his guys, what did you make of that whole scenario?
Well, I put it this way, that they are not the only ones that have gone through that. We've done that a few times too. And, we were always critical of the guys not responding at that time and, using excuses, I didn't see it, or I didn't see what was going on, I didn't know what was going on, and they come up with a million excuses. But
Radko Gudas was suspended for 5 games by the NHL Department of Player Safety after a knee-on-knee hit that injured Toronto Maple Leafs captain Auston Matthews during a game between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Anaheim Ducks. The league announced the suspension after reviewing video of the collision and conducting a disciplinary hearing with the Anaheim defenseman. The incident happened during the second period of the game. Matthews moved toward the puck near the net, inside the offensive zone. At that moment, Ducks defenseman Radko Gudas stepped in to defend the play. Their knees collided directly. Matthews immediately fell to the ice and grabbed his left knee. He stayed down for several seconds while trainers rushed onto the ice to assist him. Officials reacted quickly to the collision. Referees issued Gudas a 5-minute major penalty along with a game misconduct. The penalty removed the Ducks defenseman from the remainder of the game. Before the hit occurred, Matthews had already scored earlier in the same period. The goal was his 27th goal of the season. At the time he left the game, Matthews had played just over 13 minutes of ice time. The major penalty created a long power play for Toronto. During that advantage, the Maple Leafs scored twice. Toronto later finished the game with a 6-4 victory over Anaheim. However, the final score quickly became secondary. The focus shifted to the injury suffered by Matthews and the hit delivered by Gudas. After the game, Maple Leafs head coach Craig Berube spoke about the play. He said, "That is a dirty play." Berube also addressed how the team reacted after the collision occurred. He stated, "Obviously, we should have had 4 guys in there doing something about it, but it did not happen then. But I thought they responded in the third." Medical testing the following day confirmed the severity of Matthews' injury. The Maple Leafs announced that Matthews suffered a grade 3 tear of the medial collateral ligament in his left knee, along with a bruised quadriceps muscle. Team officials confirmed that Matthews will miss the remainder of the 2025-2026 NHL season. Matthews is one of the most productive players in the NHL. During the current season, he recorded 53 points in 60 games, including 27 goals and 26 assists. Across his career, Matthews has produced 780 points in 689 regular season games, including 428 goals. Earlier in the same season, Matthews also became the all-time leading goal scorer in Toronto Maple Leafs history, passing former captain Matt Sundin on the franchise scoring list. Following the injury, the NHL Department of Player Safety reviewed the play involving Gudas. After the review process, the league confirmed the disciplinary decision. Radko Gudas was suspended for 5 games for the knee-on-knee hit that injured Matthews. The hearing with Gudas took place by phone. Under NHL disciplinary rules, a phone hearing limits the possible suspension to a maximum of 5 games. The suspension forced the Ducks defenseman to miss multiple games on Anaheim's schedule. Earlier on the same day as the game, Gudas had spoken about the plan to defend Matthews during Anaheim morning skate. He said, "We gotta be on top of him. We gotta make sure that he does not get space in the middle of the ice, make his nights not enjoyable." After the hit occurred and Matthews left the game with a serious knee injury, the quote, received increased attention across NHL coverage. Reaction to the suspension also came from Matthews' agent Judd Moldaver. After the NHL announced the 5-game suspension, Moldaver criticized the disciplinary outcome. He said a phone hearing and 5 games is just laughable and preposterous. Moldaver also commented on the structure of the disciplinary process. He stated, "While the hearing process is prefixed in our CBA that there was no further discipline, is a reckless and ridiculous position for player safety." He added another statement about the impact of the decision. Moldaver said, "This decision results in a further loss of confidence in the disciplinary process for all players. Players and fans deserve better." Radko Gudas is currently in his 14th NHL season and his 3rd season with the Anaheim Ducks. During the season, he recorded 2 goals and 11 assists in 52 games, along with 45 penalty minutes. His playing style has often been described as physical defensive hockey. The hit involving Matthews also followed another reported collision earlier in the year involving Sidney Crosby during an international tournament. Inside the Maple Leafs organization, Matthews' injury has major impact on the team lineup. The Maple Leafs entered this stretch of the season with a 28-27-11 record, placing the team near the bottom of the Atlantic Division standings. Without their captain and leading goal scorer available for the remainder of the season, Toronto must adjust its forward lines and offensive structure for the remaining games of the NHL schedule.
Auston's gone 9 games for a goal.
Yeah.
Offensively, have you seen him forcing it or pushing it?
I don't see him forcing it. I he's getting opportunities, and it's tough, and it's tough on him, tough on the team because we need him to produce. It's not like he's not getting his looks. It's just they're not going in right now. He's just got to stick with it. And I think he does a lot of other good things in the game. It's not just about scoring, but he'll come out of it. I have confidence in him, and sometimes you just got to get a greasy goal around the net.
The spotlight inside Toronto's locker room turned suddenly toward the captain. Cameras rolled and reporters waited. Then Craig Berube, head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, delivered a blunt message about Auston Matthews. The comment spread across hockey media within hours. The team was already losing games, and Matthews had not scored in 9 straight. What Berube said next changed the tone around the Leafs. The moment happened after another difficult night for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The team had just lost 4-3 in a shootout against the New Jersey Devils. Toronto led the game 3 different times, but the Devils forced overtime and then won in the shootout. Jesper Bratt scored the deciding goal, while Devils goaltender Jacob Markstrom stopped both Toronto attempts. During the game, Toronto still produced offense. Matias Maccelli scored once. William Nylander added another goal. Matthew Knees also scored. Goaltender Anthony Stolarz faced heavy pressure and made 44 saves on 47 shots. But the Devils controlled long stretches of the game and finished with a 47-27 advantage in shots. The loss extended a rough stretch for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The team had not won in several games. Inside the arena, reporters gathered for the post-game press conference. Head coach Craig Berube stepped to the microphone and began answering questions about the team's performance. Soon the questions turned to the captain. Auston Matthews had gone 9 straight games without scoring a goal. The drought became a major topic because Matthews has built his career as one of the NHL's most reliable goal scorers. When reporters asked Berube about the situation, the coach responded directly. "It is tough on him and tough on the team. We need him to produce." The comment moved quickly through hockey media and fan discussions. Berube explained that Matthews was still creating chances during games. The problem was that the puck was not going into the net. "I don't see him forcing it. He is getting opportunities. It is tough. It is tough on him and tough on the team." The coach also said the chances were still there for the Leafs captain. "It is not like he isn't getting his looks. They just aren't going in right now." Still, the lack of goals from the captain remained a major storyline around the team. And as the losing streak continued, the spotlight around Auston Matthews only grew stronger. The attention around the Toronto Maple Leafs did not stop with the scoring drought. Other issues began to build around the team at the same time. Injuries, roster decisions, and trade discussions all appeared during the same stretch of games. One major update came from the team's defense. The Maple Leafs announced that defenseman Chris Tanev would miss the rest of the season after undergoing core muscle surgery. The 36-year-old defenseman suffered the original injury on December 28. Doctors later decided surgery was necessary after recovery attempts attempts did not fully resolve the problem. Tanev had played 11 games for Toronto before the surgery. During that span, he recorded 2 assists and a +8 rating. Team officials said he is expected to return before training camp in September. The loss of a veteran defenseman created another challenge for the Toronto Maple Leafs roster. At the same time, unusual lineup decisions began drawing attention before the Devils game. 3 players were suddenly scratched from the lineup: Scott Laughton, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and Bobby McMann. Reporters quickly asked Craig Berube about the decision. The coach explained that the situation changed during the day. Things changed as the day went along. We held those guys out. Berube also described how the sudden lineup changes affected the team inside the locker room. It's tough. We want to win games. When you come to the rink and 3 important players aren't in the lineup, it is going to impact the guys. The scratches came during a period when trade discussions were increasing across the NHL. As the trade deadline approached, several teams were adjusting lineups while negotiations continued behind the scenes. Even with those circumstances, Berube pointed to the captain's effort during the Devils game. I thought our captain led the way in that department. He worked and competed. The coach also addressed whether the scoring drought was affecting Auston Matthews mentally. I don't sense it, I don't see it or hear it from him. Still, Berube acknowledged that extended scoring droughts can affect players internally. But anytime those scorers go a bit of time without scoring, it definitely weighs on him. That is human nature. Earlier in the season, Matthews himself spoke about the team's need for urgency during difficult stretches. I don't think concern is the right word. I just think we need more desperation, more fire. Matthews added another message about the team's approach moving forward. We know the position that we're in, and we need to be the more desperate team every single night. The comments reflected the situation facing the Toronto Maple Leafs. As the season continued, the team was searching for wins. The captain was still chasing his next goal, and the message from the coach had already spread across hockey media. It is tough on him and tough on the team. We need him to produce.
What's your reaction to the addition yesterday, Conor Murphy, kind of what your experience is playing against him and what you know about him?
Yeah, not fun to play against, which is always a good sign. Just solid player. I think he can really help for sure.
A quiet moment in the Edmonton Oilers locker room suddenly turned into one of the most talked about comments of the NHL trade deadline. Connor McDavid stepped in front of reporters and spoke about Edmonton's newest move. The words were calm, but the message carried weight across the league. A veteran defenseman had just arrived in Edmonton, and McDavid's response quickly caught everyone's attention.
The Edmonton Oilers have traded for a defenseman. That news came about an hour after the Oilers general manager said a new player wouldn't fix their defensive issues.
It's not going to be magical new players. It's going to be the approach that we take as a team, understanding that going through a whole period without getting a lot of scoring chances is okay if you don't give up a lot.
5 NHL games between the Blackhawks and Coyotes.
The Edmonton Oilers made a major move before the NHL trade deadline when they acquired defenseman Conor Murphy from the Chicago Blackhawks. The trade sent a 2028 second-round draft pick to Chicago, while the Blackhawks agreed to retain 50% of Murphy's $4.4 million salary cap. The deal brought an experienced defensive player to a team focused on strengthening its blue line before the final stretch of the season.
Yeah, anyway, all right, so the Oilers, not a great start coming out of the Olympic break, giving up quite a few goals. They go and pull the trigger on a deal yesterday. They bring in Conor Murphy. It's a second-round pick in 2028 going to the Chicago Blackhawks. Hawks are going to retain 50%. He's a UFA at the end of the year. Craig, is this a deal that you really like?
Yeah, it is. It's a deal I really like. Conor Murphy's a really solid player, and he's a stable, steady player. The exact type of player that Darnell Nurse needs. Listen,
Murphy entered the Oilers organization with more than 775 games of NHL experience. The defenseman stands 6'4" and is known for playing a physical defensive style. Throughout his career, he has taken on difficult matchups against opposing forwards. Coaches frequently use him on the penalty kill and in late-game defensive situations when protecting a lead. During the current season with Chicago, Murphy appeared in 60 games and recorded 4 goals and 9 assists. His role focused mainly on defensive coverage rather than offensive scoring. He regularly played against top offensive lines and ranked among Chicago's leaders in block shots and defensive zone minutes. Edmonton's decision to add Murphy came after several defensive struggles during the season. Analysts reviewing team performance noted that the Oilers ranked 18th in expected goals allowed at 5-on-5. The penalty killing unit also ranked near the lower tier of the league. These numbers became an important factor as the front office evaluated roster needs before the trade deadline. Connor McDavid addressed the move shortly after it became official. The Oilers captain spoke during media availability and explained how Murphy's playing style has been viewed by players across the league. Not fun to play against, which is always a good sign. Just a solid player. I think he can really help for sure. I do not think you can have too many of those guys. Those guys are extremely valuable, so I'm excited about it. McDavid's statement described the type of defender Murphy has been during his NHL career. Forwards often measure defensemen by how difficult they are to play against along the boards and in front of the net. Murphy built a reputation in that role while playing with the Blackhawks. The Oilers expect Murphy to join a defensive group that includes Darnell Nurse, Evan Bouchard, and Mattias Ekholm. Ekholm, coaches plan to use him in defensive situations and penalty killing assignments. His presence allows the team to distribute defensive responsibilities more evenly across the lineup. The Western Conference playoff race remained close, and several teams were separated by only a small number of points. Each roster decision during the trade deadline period carried direct impact on playoff position. McDavid continued producing strong numbers during the season. At one point, he recorded 96 points, including 34 goals and 62 assists. His offensive output kept Edmonton among the top scoring teams in the league. The Oilers rely heavily on the combination of McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to generate offense in critical games. Despite that scoring production, Edmonton's recent seasons have ended without a championship. The Oilers reached the Stanley Cup final twice in the previous 2 seasons, but both series ended in losses to the Florida Panthers. Those results placed additional focus on roster improvements entering the new season. Management identified defensive structure as one of the main areas requiring reinforcement. Advanced statistics from the season showed the Oilers allowing 2.37 expected goals against per 60 minutes during 5-on-5 play in certain defensive matchups. Analysts pointed to defensive coverage and penalty killing as areas that needed improvement before the playoffs. Conor Murphy's arrival directly connects to that need. Throughout his career, Murphy has been used as a shutdown defense. Coaches rely on him to block shots, clear the front of the net, and limit scoring chances during defensive zone pressure. These responsibilities often appear during penalty kills and late game situations when protecting a lead. Murphy also brought leadership experience from Chicago. Before the trade, he served as one of the Blackhawks' alternate captains and remained among the longest tenured players on the roster. His role inside the locker room included mentoring younger defensemen while handling difficult defensive assignments on the ice. Inside Edmonton, the Oilers coaching staff began preparing defensive pairings that could include Murphy alongside veteran defenseman Darnell Nurse. Both players possess large frames and long reach characteristics often used to disrupt opposing forwards near the crease. Coaches expect this pairing to face some of the league's most skilled offensive lines. The trade also reflected the strategy of Oilers general manager Stan Bowman. The front office focused on adding experienced players rather than making major roster changes. By acquiring Murphy with partial salary retention, Edmonton strengthened its defense while keeping its core group of forwards intact. Connor McDavid's remarks about the new addition highlighted how players inside the locker room viewed the move. His description of Murphy as not fun to play against echoed the opinion many NHL forwards share about physical defensemen who protect the defensive zone. As the trade deadline approached, attention across the league remained fixed on whether Edmonton would make additional moves. The Oilers had strengthened one key position, but the playoff race in the Western Conference continued to tighten, and every game began to carry greater weight.
I think they were already sellers, Anson, but I think the way this week has gone, it has the Maple Leafs even considering not just the UFAs, but some of their longer contracted players. I think if people have ideas, they want to call them, just call them and they'll listen to what you have to say. I think they've been very disappointed by the way this year has gone, and they're willing to listen maybe on some things that they wouldn't have been willing to listen on earlier in the year.
A quiet sentence on national television just changed the Maple Leafs' entire trade deadline picture. Elliotte Friedman revealed that Toronto is no longer thinking small. The front office is widening its scope, and more names are now in play than expected. Core stars are not included, but the list is growing, and what that means behind closed doors is only starting to surface. Elliotte Friedman delivered the update during Saturday headlines on Sportsnet. He reported that the Toronto Maple Leafs are expanding what they are willing to consider before the March 6 NHL trade deadline. The original expectation was simple. Toronto would evaluate pending unrestricted free agents and decide whether to move. That plan has now shifted. Friedman said the word around them is they are widening their scope of what they would consider. That statement confirmed the organization is no longer focused only on expiring contracts. The front office is now discussing players who have term remaining on their deals. This changes the trade structure. Players with term often carry more value because acquiring teams control them beyond the season.
He's the captain of the Senators. He's a great captain for the Senators. He's not going anywhere. Auston Matthews, the one thing I can tell you about Matthews is, right before the Olympics, the Maple Leafs called Matthews and his representation, and they said, if we take a step back, and they knew that this was coming even before this week, which has really been ugly for them. If we take a step back, are we going to have a problem with Auston for next year? And they were told, no, there won't be an issue with Auston for next season at that time, right before the Olympics. So they're not looking to move Auston Matthews. I don't think they're looking to move Nylander.
Friedman also made a firm clarification. He stated, "I do not think it is anything like Matthews or Nylander. I do not think we are talking about anything like that." That removes Auston Matthews and William Nylander from speculation tied to this report. Both players are under long-term contracts, and their names are not part of the widened discussions described on air. The deadline is set for March 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That leaves only days for decision. When a team broadens its scope this close to the deadline, it signals active conversations with multiple clubs. Trade talks expand when management evaluates more than rental pieces, and that is what Friedman's update indicates.
Could you see something like that? Maybe a Kiefer Sherwood, a Bobby McMahon, and getting a very, very cheap, under $2 million 20-goal scorer?
Yes, I do think that they could look for a depth forward that fits cap-wise 100%. Now, historically, they don't like rentals.